But what Peter was trying to share with them, that it's not the suffering that's important, because they were suffering. And I want you to pay attention to this point that the Lord dropped in my spirit. The important thing is not to lose their mental grip on the things that they are suffering for. I'll say it again. It's not the suffering that they should worry about, but the important thing is not to lose their mental grip. Come on, say mental grip on the things that they are suffering for. If you got to suffer, know why you're suffering. It's a bad thing to be suffering and be afflicted and don't know why you're suffering. But if you got to suffer, at least understand. Someone say, I must understand what I'm suffering for. Because your salvation is understanding why you're suffering. And I want to kind of clear that word up, because, you know, we oftentimes have a hard time with the word suffering. But suffering does not mean the presence of pain, though it could include that. If you really study the word suffering means the allowing. Come on, say the allowing. And it's best put on display in scriptures where the disciples are pushing away a group of people who bring in young children. And Jesus turns and rebukes the disciples. He said, suffer little children and forbid them not, for such is the kingdom of heaven. And so, in other words, allow them. So suffering, though it does culminate in perhaps painful situations mentally or physically, some cases, the true import or meaning of suffering is mean that you allow it to happen. Come on, say, I must allow it to happen. And so what I'm allowing to happen, because certainly we have the right not to choose to let things happen to us. We have the right to run from God and say, I'm not going to do this. I'm not going to serve you. Peter sort of entered into that dialogue when the woman said, ain't you one of his disciples? And Peter said, no, I'm not one of his. And if you read the language of the text, Peter literally began to swear. Because the woman said, you are, because your speech betrayeth or bewrayeth, as the text says. In other words, the way you talk, you sound like you've been hanging around Jesus. So in order to cover that up, he began to swear. Because if I'm with Jesus, I don't swear. Go figure. But he had made a conscious decision at that point to maybe not allow what was to happen. But when he went out and he heard the sound of that morning bird, he remembered what Jesus said. Matter of fact, one passage says when he began to deny and the sound happened, that Peter heard it and Jesus looked at him to verify, didn't I tell you, like mama used to do. Didn't I tell you this was going to happen? And of course, Peter, being distraught, disheveled, runs out. But the other prophecy over his life was he had purpose. And that if he would allow what was to happen to him, then in fact, he would feed the sheep and the lamb of God.